Thank you so much for joining us today for Look Before You Speak. And this program has a little bit different approach than commercial television because commercial television usually allows us to absorb or look at an image for about 2 seconds. And this program is intended to allow us to really look at imagery, consume it, and learn from it. And on today's program, we have a very special guest and real gift to Missoula's community. And Valerie Hedquist, who's a professor of art history at the University of Montana, has agreed to join us today. And I'm just thrilled that she's here today.
Thank you. I'm so excited myself.
Okay. And you have some images for us to look at. And
I did. I chose works that I thought were fairly well known and wanted to share some information about them that might not be so broadly well known.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. I think the program's intended to just expand our vocabulary in looking at art. So, and thank you for being.
And what's more fun than looking at art?
That's right. That's exactly right. So, anyway, let's dig right in here.
Yeah, let's do it.
Oh, look at this.
Right, so everyone knows this work. This is, of course, the very famous painting of Starry, Starry Night by Vincent van Gogh. We call him Vincent very affectionately because I guess we feel like we know him. And this is a painting that Vincent did 1 year before his purported suicide. And so usually when viewers go to the Museum of Modern Art in New York City and look at this, I believe that they have that story with them, you know, the movie Lust for Life, and they, especially older viewers, probably remember or have seen this old movie with Kirk Douglas, of course, in the starring role as Vincent from 1956. And it was based on a book by Irving Stone, which was a very early biography of Vincent van Gogh, and this deeply troubled artist who painted and then, as I say, committed suicide in the summer of 1890. But I have been recently reading this new book. Well, it's not so new now. It's almost a decade old, but it's a big thing.
Hold this up.
Yeah. Called Vincent, a biography by Stephen Niva and Gregory White Smith. And these two authors have brought together an array of evidence talking about or claiming, it's a beautiful book, big story, Van Gogh, the life, about how Vincent did not commit suicide, but in fact was a victim of a bully. So this bully, who had been to a Wild West show in Paris, had actually a costume, dressed up as Wild Bill Cody, and had a pistol. And he followed Vincent around frequently in the town of Avers in the south of France, where, of course, Vincent had gone and was going to pretend to shoot him. And the gun went off and shot Vincent in the stomach. And this is, of course, the story about Vincent's horrific death, is that he had a gunshot wound to his abdomen and then lingered for several days before he died. And the question has always been, why would Vincent van Gogh have shot himself in that way? And in fact, these two authors, White Smith and Niva, say no, that just is ridiculous to think that he would have taken his right hand and brought it around to his left side. And indeed, instead, this young boy, really, a young man, teenager, 16-year-old René Secretan, was the person who shot Vincent van Gogh, and that it was actually, it was negligent homicide. Yeah. It wasn't intentional. Yes. But when we look at this painting then, if you bring the painting back up, sure. If we look at this painting, I think that there is an invitation to see a troubled person in this depiction of this little community. This painting was actually taken through the asylum window because Vincent, in this summer, had just been in an asylum where he had self-admitted to this asylum in just the springtime of 89. He had had a very severe breakdown in December of 88, and that's when he cut off his ear. So that depiction that we have of Vincent with the
Sure.
cut off ear
Yeah.
comes about 6 months before this work. And he talks about looking through the windows of this asylum room and out to the sky. And he would, of course, famously wrote all these letters to his brother Theo. And one of the letters said, quote, "This morning I saw the country from my window a long time before sunrise, with nothing but the morning star, which I looked at, very big." And he wrote to Theo this letter from the asylum. And he's looking at it from his bedroom window. He actually had a painting studio downstairs on the main floor, but this is from upstairs. And of course, what we see are the mountains, this little village, more like a Dutch village than a French village, this big sky, and that large white star that you see by the cypress may indeed be the Venus, the morning star, actually a planet, but of course the morning star. And this tumultuous way in which Vincent used paint, heavy paint, Prussian blue and this really citron-like yellow, together here creates a very moving image because we see his marks. So the mark making is very obvious, and that makes us feel closer to this troubled person whose biography we seem to know so well. And probably people know very well that the cypress has this association with cemeteries and has a funereal quality to it, and its juxtaposition there in the foreground with the steeple of the chapel from the village overwhelmed by this moving cosmic sky is very powerful, really powerful.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think?
Well, when I look at that, I think of Don McLean's song,
Yeah,
which was
of course.
so popular,
Yeah.
and that it is indeed an iconic image in our art vocabulary.
In our art vocabulary.
Yeah.
And I think that what I'd like to do is, although, again, Niva and White Smith recognized this, his illness as being related to epilepsy, and that he had a neurological epileptic condition, which would actually lead to those sorts of images.
That's amazing.
Right. So
That is
that's
really
what his that's what he was suffering from. And I just want to close by saying that he also wrote to Theo about how he thought of taking death to get to a star. That death was the way that you got to the star in the same way that we take a train to travel on Earth. So it's this beautiful idea of traveling. And then this image was eventually sent to Theo in September of 1889, so shortly after it was painted, and then was part of the legacy that was left to Jo, the sister-in-law. And then she was the one, of course, who was in charge of getting rid of the paintings. Yeah.
Yeah, let's dispose of them.
Yeah. Something like that.
Well, and I think that just goes to his life. I mean, the way the work was treated initially is a lot the way that he himself was treated.
Yeah, that's exactly right. He sold little, if anything, really, during his life. I think one or two objects through his brother. I mean, his brother probably negotiated those deals.
Well, and you just think of what was popular in the academy at the time,
Right.
and
Yeah,
he was really an outsider.
he was an outsider. He was truly an outsider. So I have another work that has, I think, quite I don't know, when I put these together, I thought, boy, it must have been a disguise. You know, I was definitely into this idea of the sky as this place that serves as a backdrop for a drama or some kind of drama.
Sure.
And of course, this is Joseph Millard Willem Turner's slave ship from 1840. This was shown at the Royal Academy in 1840 at the same time that there was an anti-slavery league meeting. And if you know this very popular painting from the Boston Museum of Fine Art, you know that in the foreground, and we can look at just the detail here for a moment, and then go back to the big painting maybe. There in the lower right-hand side, there is a detail which shows you why this is the slave ship. And if you look carefully, you'll see the limbs of the slaves and the chains that had actually enslaved them on the ship, having been tossed out into the water. There it is, and all of the fish and sea creatures coming around. And of course, what this Turner was a very actually vocal and outspoken abolitionist. The British had just abolished slavery in the British Empire in 1833. And this work was an attempt on the part of Turner to encourage the king to be even more aggressive and assertive in trying to broaden that abolitionist sentiment. It is a very powerful image, as you can see, very loose brush strokes. This is about 50 years before Van Gogh, but it has a very similar approach, I think,
Right.
although a very warm painting in contrast to the cool colors of Van Gogh. Very warm, rich colors here. There's the ship in the background. And of course, this is actually based in part on a publication about an actual event. There was a slave ship called the Zong, run by Captain Clarkson. The book came from 1781. It was a book that Turner had read about how this slave ship captain had thrown his cargo overboard because that would be the way he would get the insurance. So that if you actually, in some way, actually survived the shipwreck during this typhoon storm here, you wouldn't be compensated unless you had lost your cargo. And so live individuals, enslaved individuals, had been thrown overboard. Now, Turner wrote a poem, which he actually had at the same time exhibited with this work. And it's here an excerpt from it. Aloft all hands strike the top masts and belay. Young, angry setting sun and fierce-edged clouds declare the typhoon's coming. Before it sweeps the decks, throw overboard the dead and dying, ne'er heed their chains. Hope, hope, fallacious hope, where is thy market now? Really a powerful image here that speaks against this idea of slavery and also the sublime. There's the sublime at work here too. The nature is taking over, and man, even when man is acting horrifically, nature will have the last word.
Yeah.
Really powerful.
It's amazing to me, and it's so exciting because both of these images show artists, both of these artists, way ahead of their time.
Yes.
Van Gogh kind of oblivious to it.
Yep.
But Turner, way ahead of his time.
Way ahead of his time.
And when you actually see those paintings, I had the pleasure of seeing quite a few Turners, that the surfaces are amazing, and his attention, he knew exactly what he was doing, and he was really a visionary.
Yeah, so did you see the movie?
Yes.
Yes.
Which was great.
Which was great. Yeah, exactly. Sort of a curmudgeon who carried painting these.
There were some parts in that that were just wonderful.
Yeah, really. I would have to recommend it for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, let's look at another
Yeah,
image.
let's see what else we have here. So, do we have anything that? Oh,
Oh,
yes.
wow.
And here's another sky.
Yes.
See, the sky is my theme, I guess, here.
That's great.
Today. Here's the Scream, of course, by Edvard Munch, another troubled artist. Maybe they all are.
Yeah, so you have these Northern Europeans.
Right? Yep.
Wasn't he Norwegian?
He was Norwegian. There are actually 4 versions of this, and I hadn't been aware of how many there actually were, including 4 versions, painted versions, plus a lithograph. But the lithographs are quite rare as well. He produced the lithograph a year after having painted this in about 1893. And so 1894, 1895, he came out with a lithograph, but there are only about 4 dozen copies of the lithograph. And he had written about this location and his ideas for this work a year prior to the painting. One evening I was walking along a path. The city was on one side and the fjord below. I felt tired and ill. I stopped and looked out over the fjord, and the sun was setting and the clouds were turning blood red. I sensed a scream passing through nature. It seemed to me that I heard the scream, and I will paint the picture. I will paint the clouds as actual blood. The colors studied, and a skull will become the scream. And also, what along the shores here, from this actual location outside of Oslo, there was a slaughterhouse and the asylum in which his sister had just been committed.
Oh, gee.
So his sister had been committed to an asylum, and there was a slaughterhouse there. And so some art historians actually say that where he's standing, or where the skulled image is standing, is actually where you would have heard the cry of animals
wow.
or the screams from this asylum. There were also connections between, of course, the sweeping path. You can see those lurking figures in the background. The water there in the middle ground, this blood sky he talks about, might actually be related to the volcanic eruption of Krakatoa. And so that, of course, affected globally the skies that you would have experienced at about this time. And so some people actually see a connection to that as well. There are art historians who claim that Munch had synesthesia and would actually hear colors or, actually smell, let's say,
So
a
like El
sensation.
Greco.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And he also may have been inspired by a Peruvian mummy to actually create this skull shape, because he had gone and seen this exhibition in Paris of these very famous Peruvian mummies.
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite quotes of Munch is art is happy, art is sad, but art is mostly sad.
Yeah.
When you go through his work, it's mostly sad.
And this painting was a part of his sort of an autobiographical frieze of life. So he had this as a part of life, that this sort of horrific response to nature and the world was something that he saw as integral to your overarching life. It was a part of what you experienced.
Wow.
Yeah. And of course, we all know, well, I would think that a lot of people know about Munch, that he was also deeply troubled and had had a very sad life. He lost his mother when he was just a young boy, and then a very close sister before he was 14 years old. And so there were certainly past times when he was very ill and had had lots of illness in his family too.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, let's look at another
Is there
image.
anything uplifting here that we have?
Well, you brought in three of my favorites.
Oh, good. But I have something uplifting. Don't worry.
Okay.
Let's look at. Oh, here we go. See, okay. We can be happy here.
Is this in Paris?
Actually, this is a street in Paris, but this painting, of course, is in the Chicago Institute of Art. And it's very, very large. I wanted people to know how big it really is. It's like 7 by 9 feet.
Yeah.
So this is a big work with the figures in the foreground about life size. So when you stand in front of it, you really are standing as if you are on the street too, engaging with the two people here. Of course, this is Gustav Caillebott's painting. This is so exciting. I'm always excited when I talk about Caillebott, because he was a major collector of Impressionist work. When this painting was shown in the third Impressionist exhibition, there were 8 of them between 1874 and 1886. This was in the third one. He showed this work alongside 2 additional works, which I brought here because I think they'll be fairly familiar to people. One is a painting by Renoir, and the other one is one of Monet's rail station scenes. From Saint-Lazare, because these boulevards were very close to the Saint-Lazare train station. So those 2 pictures I'll show to you as well. But this painting was in the third exhibition of the Impressionists, and Caillebott, the artist, was a major collector. He collected Monet, he collected Renoir, he collected Degas, and it is his collection that forms the foundation for the current Musée d'Orsay. So he left, when we go to the Musée d'Orsay, another rail station in Paris, to see all these great Impressionist works, very, very many of them came from Caillebott and his legacy. So he was wise enough, well, he was wealthy, so he could collect, and he was wise enough to actually collect these paintings and then leave them to the French nation. So these big boulevards, I like to show this work to my students because these big, grand boulevards are brand new. The buildings are brand new. This is all urban renewal on the part of a man named Baron Haussmann, and he had been hired in the middle part of the 19th century to clean up Paris and to create grand big boulevards where there had been these medieval alleyways, to add a gas-lit illumination. You can see the prominent role of the gas light there in the center, and to have new uniform buildings throughout the city. He also brought in clean water and sewage removal from the city, really cleaned up the city so that it became a sophisticated, clean urban environment for people to show off their new fashions. And
so the painting itself, how, like if someone from the time saw it,
they'd know the place. They'd know exactly what boulevard it is.
Would they see it as really avant-garde?
Well, interestingly enough, Caillebotte was the most traditional of the Impressionists and sold the least.
That's he was an outsider.
In fact, critics would say, well, out of all the Impressionists, there's one who knows how to draw. It's Caillebotte.
Oh, that's funny.
So, and you can see in this painting that there's a certain linearity. There's a careful perspectival system that's set up there so that the boulevards are sweeping into the distance. The figures are carefully modulated so that they lead you into the distance there. But you also see the influence of photography. And the figure particularly on the far right, who is cut off, are figures that are seen as if they are not quite centered, as if, that they're not quite centered properly. That's the result of photography. You could look at photography now and get these accidental vision, these accidental fragmented views of urban life, and that's affecting Caillebotte's imagery here. But I also look at how they're all having these umbrellas, right? They all hold their umbrellas.
They have room for them.
They have room for them in these grand boulevards.
Yeah.
And additionally, this is the rise of shop and consumption, right? So consumerism is on the rise. Now the great department stores are just being built. And so you can go out and buy these fashions, and these fashions are being shown off by the people there.
That's great.
And one last thing.
Okay.
This painting probably influenced Seurat and his Grand Jatte. So that the images with all of the umbrellas in that scene, which also happens to be in Chicago.
Was probably a reference, right? It's at the Art Institute.
Yeah, it was also a reference.
Wow,
to this.
that's great.
Yeah, it's great.
Okay, now we're gonna.
These are the last. These are also in the same exhibition, the Impressionist exhibition. This work by
Is that
Monet.
the Crystal Palace, or?
This is actually this. Well, it looks like in the background. This is actually French.
Okay.
It's the Saint-Lazare railroad station where Monet worked, and the next work too is also in this Impressionist exhibition. I always like to know what other works were there. So the other one from Renoir is also a scene.
Whose is this piece?
This is by Monet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is Monet. And then, you can see that this is much more characteristically Impressionist-like, right?
Sure,
all these dabs of complementary colors and simultaneous contrasts. And the next work, too, this one by Renoir, was also in that same exhibition.
Wow.
I know, it's fabulous to think that these works that we know so well were there. So I'm going to end today with something a lot more modern.
Okay.
Because I want to get people into the contemporary scene. So the next work is actually by an artist that I just saw in Seattle. I don't know if you went to the Kehinde Wiley show, The New Republic.
I did not, unfortunately.
So
I might make it.
You might still make it. It's there till May. So this work is only a decade old. It's from 2005. And this is a scene of an African-American sitter, a man that the artist Kehinde Wiley found in his neighborhood in Harlem, in New York City. And what he has done is he's taken a common black sitter and has brought him into the studio and put him in the pose and recognizable canonical view of a traditional art historical work. So if you see the next scene here, you'll see what the
pose.
Yes, and he's actually directly modeling his African American sitter on this influential, of course, white Dutch sitter from the 17th century, who's also from Harlem.
Wow.
So there's this connection with Harlem, but of course the dress, the pose, the attitude here of this affluent Dutch 17th century figure is then appropriated by Kehinde Wiley for his view of this sitter. And of course, it's marvelous because it talks about the construction of identity and how clothing, right, hip-hop culture and this appropriation of different attitudes can actually make the man, right? Make the man, the pose and the attitude. It also raises a lot of questions, I think, about why we don't have black sitters, right? How white our canon of imagery is. And so to insert this new sitter for us, I think, is disruptive and really a healthy thing.
Sure.
Really a healthy thing. And I also want to say that the background makes it seem unstable. So I've been reading a lot about Kehinde Wiley with my students, and you can see how this decorative background does not provide any stability for the sitter, or for the, the person here.
It's floating.
He's floating. And so there's this idea that the construction, and of course here we have cast shadows. This guy's firmly fixed on the ground.
In a wealthy environment.
In a wealthy environment,
Yeah.
precisely. While Kehinde Wiley's black sitter, of course standing, is not fixed. He is someone who has to build himself anew in every situation he finds himself in. And I think it raises a lot of image issues, and
Sure,
that's what I find so exciting about contemporary art.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I wanted to thank you so much for coming on the show today.
It was so much fun.
It was fantastic. We covered a lot of ground today. And I hope people hunt you down and track you down and pick your brain.
Pick my brain about more contemporary art.
Well, and just that there's a foundation for looking and talking about art, and it's ever present.
Yeah.
And art is in our community, and we can check these things out, and it gives us a vocabulary for talking about and being supportive of art that's in our community. And thank you so much for
thank
coming
you.
on today.
Really had a great time.
Okay, good.